Hi, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make a low poly laser just like this one. It's using a scaling factor on the z-axis of a cube to extend the laser out and to bring it back in, and if it hits nothing it just kind of disappears and it'll come back. And I've attached two of these things to a player, just a little first person controller, and you can jump around and shoot lasers. So basically I just want you to be able to download this project and be able to use these lasers in your own project. I'm going to show you how to make the laser in Blender first and then show you the script that's attached to it. So let's get out of here and let's start from scratch. Back to this, make a new scene. Okay, empty scene, nothing in it. First thing we have to do is go into Blender to make that kind of magical extendable object there. So I'm using Blender 2.75. It should look a lot like this. You can look here to see my all my keystrokes and stuff. So the first thing I'm going to do is add a cylinder for like somewhere to hold the laser. Then I'm going to come over here and make this 6 for the vertices. So we got a nice hexagon. Then I'm going to hit tab to go to edit the faces. And for just like a really simple version, let's just extend it out by pressing E and then stopping there, scaling it down with S and E, and then pulling down, and scale that for like a nice like little laser base. It's kind of like the one that I made. So we have that. Let's set its center of mass, set its origin to the center of mass, and then Shift S to put the cursor in the center, and then Shift S again, and then put the selection to the center. So it's kind of just centered in Blender. That's all I wanted to do there. Now what I can do is I want to place a cube directly in there, but I mean for now I can just hit tab, go in object mode, hit A to unselect everything, and put the cursor anywhere else because that's where it's going to make the object that I'm about to make. So I'm going to make a new cube, and this is going to be the extender cube. Alright, so making a new cube, probably make it smaller by hitting S. About that big is good. And so what happens now is that if I try and scale it, if I try to scale it as an object, and on any axis it'll just kind of scale in both ways. There's no way to set it so that, you know, it scales like a beam, except for if you go to here, hit tab so you can edit its, select its faces, and then you've selected that face, so you've kind of selected the center of this bottom face. And now what I'm going to do is go into, or just do Shift S and make the cursor go to selected, hit tab to go back into object mode, and then set the origin to 3D cursor. And now look at what happens when I extend it. It's perfectly extends in one direction only, and that's just by changing its center of mass, or its origin. And I'm going to undo that, make sure its origin is still there. Now what I want is to go into object mode, come over here, and I want to place that right on that middle face. So I'm going to hit period on the numpad to center in, hit tab. So now I want to put the cursor to selected, and when I select that face, so it puts it at the center of that face. And then I'm going to object mode, take this cursor to, or selection to cursor, and now it's right there. Let's scale it down some more. And now essentially we've got the makings of our little beam. It'll scale like that. And yeah, hit tab, go into object mode, make sure everything's alright here. So we've got, in Blender we have two objects in the hierarchy, and you'll see how this translates over into Unity. I'm about to save it and just open it up in Unity. It automatically imports. So save. And put it inside. I was just working on this low poly laser beam. Assets, models, right here, and we'll call this just low poly laser 2. I'm not sure if this will be in the repo. It's just a test file because I have the one that's already made up. So this is all done in Blender. Anything to do with scale might need to be changed. Okay, so before, yeah, let me do that so the scale is not all weird. Select the first object, the outer object. Okay, scale is 1:1. It's all good here. But this one's kind of altered, so we're going to do, as you can see, it's like 0.060. I just want that to be the same when we bring it into Unity, so I'll do Control A and set its scale. Now it's just 1 dot. You want to leave the location that way because that's how it knows it's a offset, and we'll see how that works when we bring it into the game. And let's just save that again. Okay, new scene in Unity. It's gonna load a little while. It's importing it because I have Blender installed in the models. And I got this load poly laser 2, drag it in. That's simple as that. I saved it into that folder and now I can drag it in. And now we have this object in here, which it gives us initially an empty object, just an empty container with an animated component. We can just get rid of that. And the important thing here is that you have to take this inner cube, name it whatever. You'll see in the other one, I've kind of named them all differently. Name this one something else, and then name that something for the base. You'll see that it kind of works. So let's just make the Z go up, right? I'm gonna just come over here and click Z, and it totally works for like that laser kind of effect you can see in both views. But this thing has to be a child of the base, so they rotate together. It'll say something about prefab connections, but we haven't even made prefab. It's just talking about the model here, so that doesn't matter. And then you can rotate the entire container and make sure it's facing the way you want. And yeah, and now you got your little, you can see the little bullet that's still in there. So let me show you what I did in this scene. That should be in the repo if you want to download it and look for yourself. This is what I have set up. I have just low poly laser. It's the same exact thing with the empty container with the animation component removed. Then we've got laser base, which we can just hide through your mesh render, and now you can see the red little cube. I just gave it a different material. And there's beam, and that's where the important object is. It's got a mesh collider, it's a trigger, and it's convex, and the only script that you really need. And the really important thing is the particle system. So I pretty much just put the particle system inside the prefab just because I don't want to instantiate it every time. Basically, the particle system is always there and it's always ready to go off and give you that effect, but it only happens when this beam hits something. So that's how I get that effect, and I just don't want to instantiate a particle effect every time. And by default, it does not play on awake because there's no reason to play anything on awake. And right now, since that thing doesn't have its mesh render on, that's essentially what it looks like. Now to explain that code, so we have that beam, and let's turn this mesh render back on. We have this beam, which is just a cube inside of there, and then so we attach this script. So the first thing we take care of is just the particles, game object particles, and the particle system, so I can get a reference to that later and easily call some methods for that. On awake, I get that particle system because I set it to the first child of that beam object, which is the extendee object, if that's how you want to think about it. So that's where those two things come in the beginning, and then just 4 floats. One for rotation speed for whatever. This is just rotates the red cube, and that's this line right here. The extend speed, which is how fast it extends, it essentially uses that for lerping, right here. I'm not sure if I'm doing that right. And then a scale factor, which is the most important thing, and I'll kind of show you how I figured that out. And that came in pair with distance to hit point. So it rotates pretty much every frame. That's just all an update. A typical raycast statement. If the raycast is true, it's going to take the local scale and lerp it to the same scale on X and Y, but the Z is affected by distance to hit point and Z scale factor. And the beam hit particles, which is the object, not the system itself. The position is at the hit point of the raycast, so it just raycasts from that little cube. Oh yeah, the important thing is that, so we're raycasting from this cube, and this cube itself has to ignore raycasts on set it to that layer, otherwise it'll mess up all the calculations. You get a lot of wonky stuff going on. So that's just like a quick fix for that. I'm sure there's something else you could do. But so that'll extend there. I have this look at function to make the particles look away from the ground, so it kind of looks right, and then I keep a distance to hit point and just make that public so I can see what's going on. And then if it's not hitting anything, oops, we hit nothing, it scales back to 1, so the cube becomes that small little cube again by the same speed, and the particles stop. And the particles only play if that extendo beam hits something. And yeah, hope that explains the entire thing. you can use this for whatever, and yeah. And hopefully in the next video we'll see something closer to this. This doesn't make sense, it's just a shark with a laser beam attached to its head. And I haven't really worked on this, but it's like it's rigged out. You can move it out, and can't really move the laser, but it's coming along. Alright.